Q Review Print Speaking to the Blind, celebrating 40 years of audio newspaper production. Welcome to this week's edition of the Herald Scotland podcast, recorded at the Bishop Briggs Media Centre by our amazing volunteers. You can get in touch with us via Facebook, Twitter or Instagram using @CuneReview, that is @CuandReview. You can also contact us directly by emailing information@cunereview.com. That is INFORMATION@CuandReview.com, or by calling 0141 772 3976. That's 0141 772 3976.
The Herald Scotland, on Wednesday the 8th of May 2024. From the news section. Body found in Kirkwall Harbour, Orkney, Wednesday morning. An article written by Josh Carmichael and read by me, Corey. The body of a man has been discovered in Orkney waters this morning. Police in Orkney have confirmed that a man's body was found in the water at Kirkwall Harbour this morning, and emergency services remain on scene. The body was discovered in the early hours of Wednesday morning at around 5:40 a.m, causing disruption to transport services in and out of the area. Orkney ferries were forced to cancel the 7 a.m. service to Stornsey and Eddy, and they were only able to take foot passengers on the 7:20 a.m. service to Westray and the 7:40 a.m. service to Sandy, due to the link span closing for a police investigation. The ferry operator also had to close its phone lines to contact passengers about the disruption. At around 9:30 a.m, the link span at Kirkwall Pier was reopened with normal services being resumed. A Police Scotland spokesperson said, around 5:40 a.m. on Wednesday the 8th of May 2024, the body of a man was discovered in the water at Kirkwall Harbour, Orkney. Emergency services are in attendance and inquiries are ongoing. The RNLI has also been contacted for comment. That article was from the Herald Scotland. It was from the news section. It was written by Josh Carmichael, and it was read by me, Corey. The Herald Scotland, on Wednesday the 8th of May 2024. From the news section. College support staff to receive revised pay offer. This is an exclusive article written by Garrett Stell and read by me, Corey. College employers will table a new pay offer for support staff this week, the Herald can exclusively reveal. The revised 3-year pay offer will be put only to support staff unions Unison, Unite and GMB. Unite and GMB have previously voted to accept an earlier offer of £5,000 over 3 years. No new offers expected for lecturing staff represented by EIS FELA. A source close to college employers said, recent informal talks between College Employers Scotland, CES, and support staff trade unions have made good progress. Employers have agreed to a revised 3-year pay offer that can be put formally to the support staff trade unions this week. It is hoped that the support staff trade unions will then put this new offer to their members in formal ballots and avert further industrial action. Pay talks with the EIS FELA remain ongoing. College support staff have been in dispute with employers since 2022, when they submitted a pay claim and joined lecturing staff in a nation dispute over the terms of pay deal and gratuities of no compulsory redundancies. Unions eventually voted in favour of launching industrial action, and have carried out 13 days of strike action so far. Before this week, the most recent offer from college employers consisted of a £5,000 pay rise over 3 years for all staff, lecturers and support at all pay grades. Support staff unions GMB and Unite have already accepted this offer. Unison has by far the largest membership of the 3 unions, and as such carries 3 votes in negotiations compared to 1 each for GMB and Unite. This breakdown means that there will be no agreed deal for support staff until Unison's roughly 2,500 members approve an offer. Disputes between employers and support staff have been a regular occurrence over the past decade. Since 2014, there have been at least 7 separate disputes over pay and terms of employment. In addition to the current pay dispute, support staff have been engaged in a dispute over an ongoing process of job evaluation. This was meant to be a 6-month process as part of the job harmonisation needed for national bargaining to come into play in 2016, but has dragged on for more than 6 years. Support staff represent roughly half of the college workforce, and jobs range from classroom support to IT staff to building management. Unison most recently voted in favour of strike action in 2023, with a mandate that runs through the end of May. College employers have previously made 2 offers to trade unions labelled full and final, and have said there is no room in college budgets to improve the most recent offer, which will cost roughly £72 million to pay out all staff. The financial details of the new offer have not been disclosed. However, it is different from previous offers in that it is explicitly for support staff and does not include college lecturers. Unison, GMB, Unite and EISFELA have been approached for comment. Due to the structure of the national bargaining system, even through the lecturers union EISFELA and support staff trade unions are part of 3-sided negotiations with employers, support staff can come to an independent resolution without having EISFELA on board. The industrial disputes are set against backdrops of serious financial concerns across the college sector. The Herald's recent Spotlight series on the state of Scotland's colleges revealed that the sector is facing a £500 million funding gap over the past 3 years. Employers and trade unions have called on the Scottish Government to address chronic underfunding of the sector. Off the back of the Herald series, the issue of college funding has been a regular point of contention in Holyrood, and Minister for Further and Higher Education Graham Day facing multiple calls this week to step in and resolve the long-running disputes. That article was from the Herald Scotland. It was from the news section. It was an exclusive article written by Garrett Stell and read by me, Corey. The Herald Scotland on Wednesday the 8th of May 2024. From the news section. Hunterian Museum shrimp named Ouija in honour of Glasgow origins. This article is written by Jodie Harrison and read by me, Corey. A type of shrimp that died out hundreds of millions of years ago has been declared a new species and a Glaswegian. The shrimp is believed to have swam in the Carboniferous seas surrounding Glasgow around 333 million years ago. Its fossil was found at the same world-famous locality where the Bearsden shark was excavated in the early 1980s. The shrimp has been given the name Teleocaris ouija, after a scientific paper identified it as a Glaswegian crustacean. Its authors thought that it would be appropriate to name the species in honour of the people of Glasgow and the local dialect. The paper was recently published in the Royal Society of Edinburgh's journal Earth and Environmental Science Transactions. Dr. Neil Clark, curator of paleontology at the Hunterian and one of the paper's authors, said, It is quite rare that any fossil is recognised as a new species, and particularly the fossilised remains of a shrimp. I am especially proud, as a Glaswegian myself, that we were able to name the fossil shrimp Teleocharis ouijii. Named after the people of Glasgow, this must surely be one of the oldest ouijiis at over 330 million years old. Dr. Andrew Ross, Principal Curator of Paleobiology at National Museums Scotland and the second author of the paper, said, "This new species of crustacean, along with others collected recently from the Scottish borders, now in the collections of National Museums Scotland, add to the knowledge of life at the beginning of the Carboniferous 350 to 330 million years ago, when black-boned animals were starting to colonise the land." Emeritus Professor at the University of Glasgow and editor of the Earth and Environmental Science Transactions Journal, said, "This new species of fossil crustacean is basically a tiny fossil version of what we eat as scampi today. This paper goes to show that there is still great science to be done with fossils that can be discovered on our own doorstep. Moreover, naming one of the new species, T. ouijii, shows that there is still room in the serious world of professional paleontology and scientific publishing for a welcome bit of light-hearted Glaswegian banter." That article was from the Herald Scotland. It was from the news section. It was written by Jodie Harrison, and it was read by me, Corey. The Herald Scotland, on Wednesday, the 8th of May, 2024. From the news section. New First Minister John Sweeney expected to name Cabinet. This article was written by Jodie Harrison and read by me, Corey. John Sweeney will be sworn in as the new First Minister of Scotland on Wednesday, and is expected to appoint his Cabinet on the same day. The ceremony at the Court of Session in Edinburgh will involve the Perthshire North MSP making his statutory declarations, after which he will be granted his official title of First Minister and Keeper of the Scottish Seal. He pledged to devote himself to the job after winning a Holyrood vote, meaning he will become the 7th person to be First Minister since the Scottish Parliament was established 25 years ago, following an unopposed selection process a week after presider Hamza Yusuf resigned. Mr. Sweeney said it was an extraordinary privilege to become Scotland's First Minister, as he pledged to give everything I have to the role. He shook hands with opposition leaders in the chamber at the Scottish Parliament after the vote. Mr. Sweeney told the other parties at Holyrood, "If we want to give our businesses a competitive edge, if we want to take climate action, if we want to eradicate child poverty, if we want to change people's lives for the better, we have got to work together to do so." But he said he would, quote, "give all my energy and my willingness to achieve this," commenting to be the First Minister for everyone in Scotland. He thanked his wife Elizabeth, who has multiple sclerosis, making clear his profound eternal gratitude to her for the sacrifices she is prepared to make, so he could take on the job. Later on Tuesday, the couple posed for photographs on the steps of Bute House in Edinburgh, the official residence of the First Minister. That article was from the Herald Scotland. It was from the news section. It was written by Jodie Harrison, and it was read by me, Corey.
From the Herald Scotland, Wednesday the 8th of May. From the sports section, Rugby Union. Mosese Tuipulotu is signing, but SRU player pathway needs fixed. Article by Martin Hannan. If you write about rugby long enough and make predictions now and again, the law of averages says you're bound to get one right eventually. When Blair Kinghorn moved to France to play for Toulouse during the season, I felt sure he would be a success in a team replete with stars such as Antoine Dupont, Roman Ntamak and Thomas Ramos. And that's just the backs. His consistent performances for Toulouse have proven me correct. He proved his worth to his club at the weekend with a fine performance in the European Rugby Champions Cup semi-final victory over Harlequins. However, the former Edinburgh Rugby man picked up a nasty injury in a tackle from which he emerged with black eyes and a clearly broken nose. The pictures look horrific. I don't know what the medical team at Toulouse have planned for Kinghorn, but having had a broken nose myself, technically a deviated septum, I would suggest he doesn't do what I did. The surgeon in A&E said, we could just let it sit for now and you can play in a week or two, then we'll bring you back in a few weeks and put you under anaesthetic and break your nose all nice and straight again. But you look like a big strong lad, so I could just fix it now. I said, sure, go ahead, and the doctor promptly grabbed my nose and straightened it there and then. I have never felt anything so painful in my life, so if you're reading this, Blair, just let the schnozzle set and get it fixed during the summer. Whatever you do, don't miss the final in a fortnight on Friday against Leinster at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium in London. You deserve to be there, and it will be a career high in club terms for you. Kinghorn's up and downs prove that a professional career in rugby union is no picnic. Players have to take the opportunities presented to them, and Kinghorn was just the latest Scot to ply his trade in a foreign land. The best players will always be in demand, and as long as they are available for internationals, I don't think we should stop any Scottish internationalists from going down south or abroad to play at a higher level of club game. After all, Scotland head coach Gregor Townsend had a spell in France and knows that going elsewhere can improve players. I would much rather they stayed here and played for Glasgow Warriors or Edinburgh Rugby, but our two professional clubs just cannot compete on salary levels with the biggest teams elsewhere. I do get annoyed when Edinburgh and Glasgow bring in foreign talent that is not qualified to play for Scotland, but that is not the case with Edinburgh Rugby's latest signing. Australian-born Musi Tuipulotu, whose arrival at Murrayfield was announced earlier this week. His brother Sione had been an outstanding success for the Warriors and Scotland, and though younger and comparatively inexperienced, there's every hope Mosese can emulate his brother's success. Thank goodness for that Greenock-born granny of theirs. Perhaps he will be like Sione and prove that if he's given the chances, Scotland might just have signed a real prospect. There has been much comment about the failure of Scotland's player performance pathway, but with such limited player numbers, the fact is we need to find talent and bring it here, as long as players are qualified to play for Scotland. World Rugby now decrees that you have to be a resident, have had your primary home permanently there, for 5 years before you can play for a country to which you have no family link, so I don't think there will be too many professionals queuing up to wait 5 years to get a cap. Fixing that pathway and encouraging the grassroots of our sport to find new talent must be one of the highest priorities of the new Chief Executive of Scottish Rugby. With Mark Dodson's severance complete, that Chief Executive needs to be in place very soon, and I seem to recall the first week in May being pinpointed as the deadline for the new appointment. If it takes a bit longer, then that's fine, as long as the right person for the job is found. May I suggest that one of the Chief Executive's first tasks should be to speak to community clubs and schools to ask why more is not being done to encourage youngsters to play the game. They will tell him or her the answer straight away. There are simply not enough resources to put into foundation level of the sport, particularly in state schools. Until every state school in the country can offer rugby in its sporting curriculum, we will always be playing second best to the brown ball game and won't be finding the Scottish talent that I believe could be out there. And that article was written by Martin Hanan.
This letter is from the Herald on Monday, the 2nd of May, 2024. It is from the Voices section, and the headline is A Record to be Proud of, by Andy Stenton. I admit I find John Swinney a bit boring, but agree with those who say he's a safe pair of hands. If it's a choice between him and Kate Forbes as the next First Minister of Scotland, then there should be only one winner. And please don't trot out that SNP continuity line again. Former First Minister Nicola Sturgeon and soon-to-be former FM Humza Yousaf promoted equality for all, prioritised tackling the poverty issue and affordable housing, and ensured the NHS was as healthy as it could be under extremely difficult circumstances. They stood for ideals and values most Scots, I would hope, agree with. Miss Forbes, meanwhile, has some issues. She's against same-sex marriage, not so keen on single mums, and is happy for protests outside abortion clinics. I'm sorry to see Mr. Yousaf go. He was honest, decent, reliable, and a breath of fresh air. The achievements of the Scottish Government, despite the restrictions placed on it by Westminster, should be applauded, not continually condemned by the media. Andy Stenton, Glasgow. This letter is from a selection in the Herald on Thursday the 2nd of May 2024. It is in the Voices section and the headline is SNP's big problem is it won't accept the world has left it behind, by Peter A. Russell. It is quite clear the SNP establishment is hell-bent on the goal of installing a continuity candidate. Step forward once more, John Swinney, to stop Kate Forbes getting the top job. The reasons for this are generally phrased in terms of her personal and religious morality, but to the outsider it seems there are other reasons. Above all, Miss Forbes is not the continuity candidate, and what the SNP grandees and their lackeys most fear is a radical re-examination of the party's entire project. This is obviously an existential threat to their most deeply held beliefs. Above all, that independence is, according to the ridiculous Humza Yousaf, frustratingly close, and all that is needed is one more heave, and suddenly the scales will fall from the benighted eyes of those horrid Yuns, and all will be well, and Scotland will become Denmark with mountains. The truth is that the Salmon-Sturgeon-Yousaf model is outdated and unrealistic, and that there is no prospect of a new independence referendum until at least 2039. Any honest new leader of the SNP will start from that reality and build towards a new paradigm, rather than stewing the juice of the defeats of the past. This is the fear of the outgoing SNP hierarchy as they desperately cling on to the wreckage of the Sturgeon years, denying that the world is leaving them behind. It is no wonder that they are terrified of moving on, and that Kate Forbes might be honest enough to demand that they do so. Peter A. Russell, Glasgow. This letter is from the Herald on Thursday the 2nd of May 2024. It is from the Voices section, and the headline is Wolf Pack Mentality, by Susan Martin. Note that letters criticising Humza Yousaf on April 30th are all from male correspondents who have called him hapless, useless, and describe him as having a woeful lack of focus, and how the job as First Minister was beyond his capabilities. No wonder men have mental health problems, as the wolf pack attacks from ill-conceived ideas of leadership. The two letters of support and regret at his departure came from women. They pointed out his achievements while in office, and more importantly his character traits as decent, kind, caring, principled. I would add brave, as he stood alone as a leader in the UK in calling for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza. No one is perfect, but we need to value good qualities in our leaders. As the song says, you don't know what you've got till it's gone. Susan Martin, Glasgow.
The Herald, Friday the 10th of May, from the news section. 4 bars call for rethink on juryless rape trials. The 4 bars of Scotland, England and Wales, Ireland and Northern Ireland have called on new First Minister John Swinney to abandon a pilot scheme for juryless rape trials. The Victims, Witnesses and Justice Reform Scotland Bill would see the number of jurors in criminal trials reduced from 15 to 12, remove the not proven verdict, and could also see rape cases held without a jury. Advocates such as Rape Crisis Scotland state that having such cases held in front of a single judge rather than a jury of the public could both make the process easier on victims and lead to more convictions for the crime. However, the plans to pilot the scheme have proved controversial, with defence lawyers threatening to boycott amid concerns it would impinge on the accused's right to a fair trial. Now, 4 of the top lawyers in the UK and Ireland have released a joint statement criticising the proposals. Roddy Dunlop, KC, Dean of the Faculty of Advocates, along with Sarah Phelan, SC, Chair of the Bar of Ireland, Moira Smith, KC, Chair of the Bar of Northern Ireland, and Sam Townend, KC, Chair of the Bar Council of England and Wales, have urged the new First Minister to change course. A joint statement said, "It is a matter of justifiable concern to the 4 bars that the removal of juries made up of a cross-section of the public for rape and other serious sexual offence trials continues to be pursued in Scotland. The proposal has drawn substantial and widespread criticism from academics and the majority of legal professionals. The evidence base demonstrating the possible benefits of such a change is narrow, and there are foreseeable negative consequences, including the undermining of faith in and respect for the role of the jury throughout our criminal justice systems. Trial by a jury of one's peers is respected throughout the common law world for its veneration of democratic ideals, its age, gender and ethnic inclusiveness, and its respect for citizens' and judges' respective roles in the administration of trials of the most serious offences, where loss of liberty for a long period is in contemplation. It is for precisely that reason that the constitutions of many common law jurisdictions recognise the importance of the right to jury trial. At a time when the separation of court and state, so crucial to liberal democracy, is under attack, the 4 bars stand as one in opposition to this unjustified and dangerous proposed development. It is hoped the new First Minister will heed these concerns and change course." That was an article by Gabriel Mackay. The Herald, Friday the 10th of May, from the news section. Swinney defends Forbes as Greens claim LGBTQ community afraid. Kate Forbes has vowed to serve all communities in Scotland after the Scottish Greens claimed LGBTQ people were afraid because of her return to frontline politics. The party is livid at John Swinney's decision to make the Skye, Lochaber and Badenoch MSP his deputy. There has also been criticism from the SNP's LGBTQ wing, Out for Indy. They say they will be seeking urgent clarification from the FM and DFM that our progressive LGBTQ plus policies, such as a ban on conversion practices, will not be stalled or removed from the programme of government. During First Minister's questions, Patrick Harvey asked if the new SNP leader's vision for the future of Scotland was to take the country back to the repressive values of the 1950s. Later in the day, Ross Greer told MSPs that his party would vote against Ms Forbes' appointment. However, a possible crisis for the government was averted when the Lib Dems abstained and Alba's Ash Regan voted with the minority administration. A number of opposition MSPs also did not take part in the vote. In the end, Ms Forbes' appointment was approved by 63 to 57. The Deputy First Minister, a number of the socially conservative Free Church of Scotland, came in for criticism during last year's SNP leadership contest over comments on gay marriage. Though she was not a member of the Scottish Parliament when the legislation was passed in early 2014, she told an interviewer that she would have voted no if she had been. In another interview, she said, "Having children outside of marriage would be wrong according to my faith." The comments led to a number of her backers quitting her campaign before it really started. It also saw her criticised by Mr Swinney. At the time he said, if Kate wants to set out those views with which I profoundly disagree, despite being a man of deep faith, then the party membership will make their judgment about these views, and whether they think those views are appropriate for someone to hold if they are a leader of the SNP and First Minister. On Thursday, Mr Greer told MSPs there is not a credible argument for someone being an unsuitable First Minister, but a perfectly suitable deputy. Mr Greer told MSPs, my belief in the good news brought by Jesus Christ is something I share with Mr Swinney and Miss Forbes, and in that we share something far more important than party affiliation or political ideology. Faith is not the issue here. The issue is that I'm being asked to vote for someone who thinks there's something wrong with me. He said many LGBTQ Scots were afraid. I know that's not your intention, but it's certainly not the intention of Miss Forbes. But it's the reality. Responding to the Scottish Green MSP's comments, the First Minister said the country he leads today is a modern, diverse, dynamic society, and that he wanted to keep it that way. He said his whole government was committed to that. I want every single person in our society to feel that they are at home and at peace in our society, he added. Mr Swinney told Mr Greer, I come to these conclusions from a very deep Christian faith. I believe that nothing can separate us from the love of God. That is the foundation of who I am. Nothing can separate us from the love of God, and we are equal in the eyes of God. Every one of us. I hope those comments, which are more forthright about faith than I have ever uttered in my 45 years in politics, will perhaps illustrate to Parliament the magnitude of the seriousness with which I take the issues that Mr Greer puts to me. Speaking to journalists after First Minister's questions, Miss Forbes said, I am here to support the First Minister, and together we serve all communities in Scotland as we further and progress the rights of every community in Scotland, and I look forward to doing my part in achieving the government's aims in that regard. Not just that, but when I joined government yesterday, in a clear role to support the First Minister, I signed up to collective responsibility, so I stand by the government's decisions and agenda to improve and progress the rights of all of Scotland's communities. That was an article by Andrew Lermouth. The Herald, Friday the 10th of May, from the news section. 3 pegs on which Swinney should hang his First Minister's hat. Compromise normally makes a good umbrella, but often a poor roof. John Swinney, Scotland's new First Minister, will hope that that roof will be good enough to see his government and his party through to the 2026 Scottish Parliament elections. It most likely will. Last month, the SNP was a senior partner in a government which was struggling on policy and whose priorities appeared woefully skewed, led by people who, whether justified or otherwise, were not seen by the public as competent. Today, that third P, people, has been in large part rectified. The high-level signal that the Swinney-Forbes team sends is that the government is now serious about the issues that really matter to people: the economy, health, education, transport, housing. And make no mistake, from the perspective of Anna Sarwar's opposition Labour Party, providing a credible alternative to Mr Swinney and his new deputy, Kate Forbes, is a world away from providing that alternative to Humza Yousaf and Patrick Harvey. Life is harder now for Mr Sarwar. Nonetheless, as the remainder of the Cabinet and junior ministerial announcements filtered through during the course of Wednesday, Mr Sarwar will have breathed a sigh of relief. The compromise became clear. You can have Kate, but we want continuity too. The lack of change brings the other 2 Ps, policy and priority, into ever sharper focus. The Swinney-Forbes government must deliver now. They must be the change, rejecting continuity through their actions rather than their words. If they fail to do so, Mr Sarwar will be ready. This week, in amongst the hustle and bustle of the election and appointment of Mr Swinney and his cabinet, His government was given 3 hooks on which to peg that change. Considered together, these 3 are perfect opportunity for juxtaposition between the government of last month and the government of today. The first is the evidence given to Holyrood's Health Committee by Dr. Hilary Cass, former president of the Royal College of Paediatrics and Child Health and author of the review which has decimated the concept and practice of gender ideology-based care for children. The second is the forecast from accountancy major EY that Scotland's economic growth will fall from its previous estimate, a sluggish 0.7%, to a truly dismal 0.4%. And the third is from Property Mark, the Association for Residential Letting Agents, whose research has shown that no fewer than 100% of landlords are more likely to increase rents during tenancies as a result of rent caps. The Cass review has been a welcome intervention in the toxic debate over transgender rights, focused on the rights of children and the responsibilities we, as adults, have towards them. The review has ensured that English children will now be protected from gender-affirming care. We will, in future, look back on gender-affirming care as nothing short of state-sponsored experimentation on our nation's children, primarily young girls. We will look back with utter shame that, when pubertal girls told the adults around them that they wanted to be boys, when in fact they were more likely to be either gay or anxious or suffering from undiagnosed neurodiversity, we unquestionably allowed them to socially transition or, in some cases, to take irreversible puberty-blocking medication. This is not to say we should dismiss all children who present with gender dysphoria. Some will be real cases, and it is critical for their future physical and mental health that they are on a pathway to transitioning, but not when they are children, not when their identity is fluid, and not when their prefrontal cortex remains many years away from development. The risks of transitioning children who are not transgender significantly outweighs the risk of not transitioning children who are until they reach adulthood. Mr. Swinney should say so. He should acknowledge that this should never have been such a central priority of the government, that his party got the legislation wrong, and that he will be amending it both to protect children and to ensure the safety of women and the sanctity of womanhood. With that deprioritisation can go reprioritisation of the economy. Scotland is emerging from a fairly dark political period in which the government's commitment to economic growth was in question. With a party in government, the Greens, which expressly opposed economic growth, and a general trend over many years of the SNP deprioritising the economy, we forgot the basics how a successful country works. None of the services we want as a society, hospitals, schools, roads, welfare, can be delivered without money, and money cannot be generated without a growing economy. Mr. Swinney has already signalled that the economy will again be central, and of course Miss Forbes will be running it. Furthermore, there are 3 highly able ministers sitting underneath: Richard Lochhead, the Business Minister, Tom Arthur, Minister for Investment, and the returning Ivan McKee, responsible for public finance. Their first job should be to take another look at income tax, specifically the government's propensity to tax for show rather than taxing for dough, with a view to substantial reductions. We know from forecasters, the Fraser Vallender Institute and the Scottish Fiscal Commission, that the latest round of tax increases will generate almost no additional revenue due to the behaviour changes of people who live here, with an unknowable volume of investment sitting on the sidelines, wary of a hostile environment. Speaking of a hostile environment, we also now know the impact of rent control in the private rented sector, an ideological policy built on opposition to profiting from private property, which has been a predictable but unmitigated disaster. Landlords are selling property into the owned sector, Institutional investors are building in English cities where they can achieve a better return. Landlords are understandably exploiting a loophole to jack up rents in between tenancies, and all of that in the round is reducing supply and increasing demand. As we should all remember from day one of high school economics, that means rents go up. Rent controls simply need to be scrapped. This may all be immaterial. It may be that the next chapter of Scotland's political story is already written, that the Swinney Forbes government cannot arrest the trend or reverse the momentum. Mr Sarwar may take Mr Swinney's keys to Bute House. However, good things come in threes, and the 3 Bute House housewarming gifts given by Dr Cass, EY and Property Mark should be accepted with grateful thanks. That was an article by Andy McKeever.
The Herald on the 10th of May and the Voices section. Anne Brown Essay Prize, Herald's Brian Taylor leads the judging panel by Herald Scotland Online. Herald columnist Brian Taylor will lead the judging panel for this year's Anne Brown Essay Prize, which champions Scottish writing talent. The competition, organised by Wigton Book Festival in partnership with the Herald, carries a £1,500 prize for the best literary essay by a writer in or from Scotland. Mr. Taylor has a close interest in essays as a means of offering fresh perspectives on contemporary life. He said now more than ever it is vital to attempt to make sense of our confused and confusing world. A succinct essay can do just that, getting to the core, providing insight and enlightenment. The prize commemorates former Wigtown Book Festival chair and BBC radio journalist Anne Brown. As a former BBC political editor, Mr. Taylor was aware of the quality of her work, covering issues such as the Orkney child abuse scandal and her commitment to promoting the best in writing. Last year's prize was won by Rog Glass for On the Covenant and will be included in his forthcoming book Joshua in the Sky, a blood memoir published this September. He said, "I'd encourage anyone in Scotland interested in writing non-fiction to enter the Anne Brown Prize. It was wonderful to be able to share the work publicly and raise awareness of the issues I discussed, one of which is HHT, the rare blood condition shared across my family, which is so little understood." Last year's shortlist was full of writers I really admire, like Kirsty Logan and Jen Stout, and I'm convinced non-fiction in Scotland is strong. It's essential to have a home for the essay that gives it more of a profile. Adrian Turpin, the festival's artistic director, says, "We're very pleased to be welcoming such a respected figure in Scottish national life as Brian to lead this year's judging. His involvement will help us raise the profile of essay writing. Sadly, there are few opportunities for essay writers to get their work seen by the wider public. This competition and our partnership with the Herald attempts to change that. Entries can be made on any subject, but there is a 4,000 word limit and entries close on 31 May. The winner will be revealed at a special event during the festival. In addition to the prize money, the winner receives an award designed by artist Astrid Jekyll. Their entire essay is published on the festival website, and a lengthy excerpt appears in the Herald. See www.wigtownbookfestival.com for full details. The Herald on the 14th of May and the Arts and Ends section. Owners of Edinburgh's Summer Hall put venue on market. And this is by Andrew Learmonth. One of the Edinburgh Festival's fringe most important venues is up for sale. Osselman Estate Limited, owners of Summer Hall, have announced their intention to sell the building with all the current licenses included. Summer Hall Management Limited, who programme events in the old Edinburgh University Vet School, have been informed of the sale. They say that planned events, including their 2024 Fringe programme, will take place as planned. The building is substantial, covering around 2 acres, and there are more than 110 companies with offices on site. Robert McDowell, director of Summer Hall Management Limited, said in 2011 buying the old vet school buildings was ambitious, A small team worked alongside me to bring in some of the best arts in Edinburgh, especially during the festivals and year-round, including the Science Festival and others such as year-round art and music programmes. I'm so proud to say that I've been part of building a space that adheres to the original spirit of the festival and has provided a space for artists, creators and makers to play, build and grow over the years. My hope is that with new owners buying the building, Summer Hall will be strengthened for the future and continue its miraculously extraordinary activities, new investment and vigour for the next decade and beyond. Stephen Kay of Cuthbert White, the commercial property consultants tasked with the sale, said, "We're excited to be bringing this to the open market and we expect considerable interest in this property from a wide range of domestic and international parties. It is an important landmark in the history of Edinburgh, occupying an enviable location overlooking the meadows." And that was by Andrew Learmonth.
From the Herald Scotland, Sunday the 12th of May, from the sports section. Brendan Rodgers hoping Celtic end challenging season with 2 trophies. This article is written by Gavin McCafferty. Celtic manager Brendan Rodgers is determined to finish the most challenging season of his career with a double. Rodgers is on the brink of clinching the first silverware of his second spell at Parkhead after his side beat Rangers 2-1 to move 6 points and 7 goals clear of their rivals in the cinched Premiership with 2 games remaining. Matt O'Reilly's strikes set off a manic 10-minute period late in the first half, which saw John Lundstrom score an own goal and receive a red card, and Cyril Dessers head one back. The second half was not as straightforward as the Celtic fans would have expected, with O'Reilly missing a penalty and Rangers putting on some late pressure without carving out a real chance. But the full-time whistle sparked scenes of celebrations amongst the 60,000 crowd, although the players toned down their reaction given they are still not over the line. A third consecutive title looks secure though, after a season in which the lead has switched from Celtic to Rangers and back again. Rodgers returned last summer to a mixed response from Celtic fans, despite winning 7 trophies out of 7 in his first spell, and with the likes of Jota and Aaron Moy departing. Injuries to players including Lila Abada, Cameron Carter-Vickers and Rio Hatate added to the challenge. "Having had success here before, I know what the third season brings," he said. "You know, we created history with a double treble. Then that third season the mentality became a real challenge. I was coming into that third season with the team having won 5 trophies out of 6. A lot of the players I hadn't worked with before, so they didn't know me and I didn't know them. Then we lost really important players who make the football shine in this place, and the likes of Carl Starfelt, who is a brilliant defender. So that, added to the injuries we've had, made it a real challenge from a management perspective, because they are used to winning. But I've never ever doubted, since I've been a young coach, the process. And I just felt, just keep chipping away, the guys will come back at some point. We just had to keep believing and working hard. Slowly we found a rhythm, and now we sit here with 8 wins out of the last 9, and the one we didn't win was a really good performance against Rangers at Ibrox. There is still no doubt that it's probably the most challenging season I've had as a manager, but we need to finish it well now, and that's the plan. Celtic can do that at Rugby Park on Wednesday, if Rangers do not drop points at home to Dundee on Tuesday. With the title a formality, Celtic can make it a season to remember by beating Rangers in the Scottish Gas Scottish Cup final on May the 25th. "We're super determined," Rodgers said. "It's what this club is all about. The Scottish Cup has got an incredible history, so we now want to finish the league off and keep this momentum going. We'll then have a really good build-up into that week. It's the last showpiece game and we'll be determined to win that. Rangers have won only one of the last 11 derbies, and that victory came after the title was clinched last season. To turn the tide at Hampden, Rangers will have to work out a way to deal with Callum McGregor and O'Reilly, who combined for the opening goal and both threatened several times beforehand." Rangers manager Philippe Clement said of the opening goal, "It's nothing new, it is their quality, but we lacked aggression in those situations. What we could do with 10 we needed to do with 11. It's maybe too much thinking in that moment. For me, that can be the only reason, but we'll speak about that because I expect much more in those first 20 minutes. They know they can do it, They have done it before. In parts of the game they did it even with 10. And the article was written by Gavin McCafferty. From the Herald Scotland, Saturday the 11th of May, from the sports section. Green smoke and red mist. Henry Winter's Celtic vs Ranger verdict. By sports writer Henry Winter. This was a day of green smoke and red mist, a game of nerves and then nirvana for Celtic. The final seconds of the Scottish Premiership showdown were unimaginably tense. Celtic had the lead, they had the extra man, and they had the trophy gleaming more in their sights. But some of their players were running through quicksand, and the last few minutes dragged like hours. Rangers, depleted in numbers but not spirit, kept coming back at them, helped by Philip Camont's changes, especially bringing pace out wide. Rangers threw everything at Celtic. Camont's assistant, Alex Ray, sprinted to recycle a loose ball to keep the momentum. Their keeper Jack Butland strode up for a corner. His Celtic counterpart, Joe Hart, withstood the pressure. In front of Hart, the imperious Irish centre-back, Liam Scales, kept defying Rangers, clearing another Ross McCausland cross. Celtic Park was in ferment, and now torment. Their fans cheered in relief as Anthony Ralston eased the pressure, driving down the right, and then dissolved in sighs as he lost the ball to Ben Davies, and back came Rangers again. By now, Celtic fans were desperately contesting the legitimacy of a throw-in award for Rangers, anything to carry their drained players over the line. So, when the excellent referee, Willie Collum, blew for a final whistle, only the start of it was heard. It was swiftly drowned out by the sound of 60,000 in green and white celebrating. A fan on crutches waved them in the air. Countless others filmed the scenes on the pitch, loving the sight of the vanquished Scott Wright in his haunches, and Ross McCausland lying shattered and broken on the greenest of pitches. They snapped away as Hart strode towards the main stand, blowing kisses to his family as a fan threw a scarf towards him. Hart has done so much for Celtic, still a committed professional at 37, and he will be much missed when he retires this summer. Coaching and family time await. He bows out a winner, fittingly, given how much he has given in his 20-year career. 6 points clear, and with 2 games remaining, Celtic surely will be crowned champions now. As Hart headed out of view, supporters leaned over the tunnel parapet and waved him on his way. Their day had worked out, for this was a day of 2 shows, on and off the pitch at Celtic Park. What turned into a momentous day began early. Before 9 AM, the green tide rolled through town, though the barriers at Queen Street Station, young lads, groups of 4 or 5, chattering, excited, knowing what this meant. A woman with a thick green and white scarf, neatly folded, almost caressed in her left hand, waited patiently for those she was heading to the game with. Fathers and sons walked from the station into the sunshine, sharing a memory, a strengthened connection, finding a familiar haunt for breakfast before heading out to paradise. Closer to the ground, green and white gush from Dalmarnock Station, the streams of humanity becoming a river. One had a Tommy Burns number 10 scarf from 1982-83. Another was wrapped in a Celtic Borussia Dortmund half-and-half scarf. The wardrobe were threads of history. One fan wore a t-shirt celebrating Lubo Moravcik as a gift from God, as fans called him. They haven't forgotten his elegant contributions to the goal-scoring work of Henry Larsson. Another fan strolled past, shirt off, revealing a large tattoo of a dreadlocked Larsson on the nape of his neck. The man himself was here, needing 4 stewards to ease him through the adoring throng outside. When the Rangers bus arrived shortly after, Celtic fans were kept 20 yards back behind the barriers, but certainly made their voices hear. "Get your hair cut, Cantwell," was the most printable. A few offered predictions to anyone would hear. "We will win 2-0, insisted one, because we have the best players, best manager, and the best looking fans. Celtic also had the only fans here. The absence of away fans made for a strange atmosphere, still raucous and intense and loud, but self-evidently one-sided, almost like a rally. "Football without fans is nothing," read the famous saying of Jock Stein on his statue that stands guard outside the main reception. and that means away fans too. Celtic supporters certainly played their part backing their team unconditionally. Celtic Park in full voice is one of the great occasions in football. You'll never walk alone, stretched from before kick-off, over Welling Colm's first whistle, and continue 23 seconds into the game. The fans' tifo, "We will be your strength, fear nothing," read as an exhortation to their players. Inevitably, Callum McGregor was to the fore. Teams need strong leaders, and Celtic's captain led through word and deed, appearing on the right after 35 minutes and releasing the outstanding Matt O'Reilly. And so the on-field show really began. O'Reilly's left foot had already hinted at damage to Rangers' hopes, and his shot whistled past Butland. McGregor immediately ran to the fans, punching the crest on his shirt, shouting, "Come on!" Rodgers, resuming his calm after a wild salute, called his captain over, had a quick confab. Rodgers is so experienced that he knows the vital importance of the manager always retaining his clear-eyed concentration. He had to peer through a cloud briefly. A green flare was lobbed onto the field and smouldered away until Butland eventually went over and threw it away. The smell of cordite in the air, and Celtic had the scent of Rangers' vulnerability. Dyson made a cross, and John Lundstrom, rushing back, diverted the ball past Butland. More flares, more mayhem. But Rangers responded, and Cyril Dessers poached a headed riposte. Then Lundstrom's competitive nature crossed the line. He launched himself at Johnson, catching him on the ankle, a shocking challenge. VAR did the right thing. Colm had a rethink and a yellow became red. Lundstrom's journey to the tunnel was followed by waves of cheerio and more. Celtic should have brought some calm to the fray, but O'Reilly placed his weak penalty too close to Butland. Celtic became nervous, but held on, and the green wave rolled merrily back into town. And that article is by Henry Winter. From the Herald Scotland, Sunday the 12th of May, from the news section, David Cameron, UK government won't pause Israel arms sales. Report by Gabriel Mackay. Foreign Secretary David Cameron says the British government does not support an assault on Rafah in the current situation, but it would not be wise to stop arms sales to Israel. A planned ground invasion of the besieged city in Gaza, which houses more than 1 million people displaced by the war in the region, has been met with a backlash from the international community. Despite intensive negotiations, there has been no deal on a ceasefire, with Israel rejecting an Egyptian proposal accepted by Hamas, which should have brought a 6-week break in fighting and seen prisoners exchanged between the two sides. US President Joe Biden has warned that his country will not supply weapons for the offensive, with his Israeli counterpart Benjamin Netanyahu responding, "If Israel is forced to stand alone, Israel will stand alone." The British government will not adopt a similar stance. However, with Mr Cameron telling Sky News Sunday Morning with Trevor Phillips, such a move would not be wise. He said, "I think America and the UK are in a totally different situation. The United States is a massive, bulk state supplier of weapons to Israel, including 1,000-pound bombs and all the rest of it. The UK provides less than 1% of Israel's weapons and is not a state supplier. We have a licensing system, and those licenses can be closed if it's judged that there is a serious risk of serious international human rights violation." The Tory peer said he was pushed to declare an immediate arms embargo a few months ago, and the very much thing that happened just a few days later was a massive Iranian attack on Israel. So I don't think it would have been a wise path, and I still don't think it would be a wise path, he said, adding it would strengthen Hamas. Lord Cameron also said Israel must do better in allowing humanitarian aid into Gaza, and that the UK government does not support the offensive in Rafah as things stand. He said, "For there to be a major offensive in Rafah, there would have to be an absolutely clear plan about how you save lives, how you move people out of the way, how you make sure they're fed, you make sure that they have medicine and shelter and everything. We have seen no such plan, so we don't support an offensive in that way." Appearing on the same programme, the Shadow Paymaster General Jonathan Ashworth called for an immediate pause to arms sales. He said, We should be pausing arms sales in order to stop any arms that would be used in that Rafah offensive. We do not want this Rafah offensive to go ahead. It would be completely catastrophic. The Americans have said they are not going to hand over arms which could be used in a Rafah offensive. I am saying we should adopt a similar position. We should not sell British-made weapons or components that should be used in this Rafah offensive. A full-scale offensive into Rafah would be catastrophic beyond description. I think there are over 1 million people and 600,000 children involved. We have been calling for an immediate ceasefire for some time. I strongly believe we need a ceasefire. We need international aid into the region, but do not want to see an offensive go into Rafah. Lord Cameron also appeared on Sunday with Laura Kuenssberg, where he was asked about the suspension of funding to UNRWA, the UK agency which provides most of the aid in Gaza. Israel has accused members of the organisation of being part of terrorist groups and taking part in the October 7th attacks, a claim for which it has provided no evidence according to an independent review. That was enough for some nations to restore funding, but Lord Cameron said he was being more demanding and that the UK is waiting for the findings of a second report. And that article was by Gabriel Mackay. From the Herald Scotland, Sunday the 12th of May, from the politics section. Kate Forbes promises to cut bureaucracy and get stuff done. Report by Andrew Learmonth. Deputy First Minister Kate Forbes has promised to cut the red tape for businesses, saying she wants to prioritise jobs and wages, not bureaucracy. The Skye, Lochaber and Badenoch MSPs said she returned to Cabinet after a year in the backbenches as she wants to get stuff done. Ms Forbes has been mulling a bid at the SNP leadership after the resignation of Humza Yousaf. However, she opted to go to back John Swinney instead. In return, he made her his number 2, giving her responsibility for the economy and Gaelic. Her appointment has not been without controversy. Last Thursday, Patrick Harvey suggested the new First Minister was attempting to take Scotland back to the 1950s. He was critical of both her views on gay marriage and on taxation. Writing in the Sunday Times, Ms Forbes set out her plan to get the economy firing on all cylinders and make Scotland the obvious and only location for global investment. She said, "As the newly sworn-in Deputy First Minister with responsibility for the economy, I want to get stuff done. Everything is an economic policy: tackling poverty, reaching net zero, raising the revenue to invest in our public services. The plan is simple: get the economy firing on all cylinders and it will power a better future." Outlining some ways forward, she said Scotland is well placed to attract new jobs and investment in the energy industry, while another strength is Scottish food exports such as whisky and salmon, which continue to be in high demand around the world. She also said the backbone of the Scottish economy is starting and growing small businesses. However, she said the country faces extremely pressing demographic challenges, with rural and coastal areas forecast to see double-digit percentage declines in population over coming decades. Meanwhile, she said growth in cities masks the fact our working age population is not growing at a rate that our public services and economy will require. Ms Forbes said many of the macroeconomic levers lie with the UK government, but she has never allowed that to constrain their ambition to do better. She said, "My message is simple: Scotland is open for business. My plan is to prove that, to reduce the hurdles to investment, to market the opportunities and to prioritise jobs and wages, not bureaucracy." And the article was written by Andrew Learmonth. From the Herald Scotland, Sunday the 12th of May, from the news section. Scottish Government committed to conversion therapy ban, by Andrew Learmonth. The Scottish Government is committed to a ban on conversion therapy, Health Secretary Neil Gray has said. He described the legislation as important. The comments came after Dr Hilary Cass told MSPs on Tuesday that clinicians were worried about prosecution if the new law comes in. A Scottish Government consultation document released earlier proposed a new criminal offence of engaging in a conversion practice, whether that is provided by a healthcare practitioner, a family member, or a religious leader. The paper defines conversion practices as where there is a purpose or intention to change or suppress another individual's sexual orientation or gender identity. It then gives several examples, including prescribing medication to suppress a person's sex drive, or therapy, or counselling that requires a person not to act in their same-sex attraction, including through celibacy. Any such action would become illegal, with one possible punishment being imprisonment for a term not exceeding 7 years. Dr. Cass, the paediatrician behind a landmark review on the treatment of transgender children, said that while conversion therapy was completely unacceptable, MSPs needed to take care not to bring in legislation which would deter clinicians from having appropriate exploratory conversations or make them even more anxious potentially about working in this area. The Scottish Greens have warned Mr Swinney against diluting the watertight conversion therapy ban. Speaking to BBC Scotland's Sunday show, Mr Gray said the government was looking at the responses to the recent consultation and would reflect upon them. But we're committed to continuing with that legislation because it's an important piece of legislation, he added. The comments came amid reports that the new SNP leader could be set to roll back on a number of promises made during the days of the Bute House Agreement, including on key Green Party policies like rent controls and the decarbonisation of home heating. Mr Gray told BBC Scotland's Sunday show, "I'm very pleased at the way John has started his tenure as First Minister. Looking to reach out has meant that we've had a huge amount of positivity, both within the party, but I feel also within the country around the direction of travel and where we can go what we can achieve." He said, despite all of Humza Yousaf's cabinet secretaries remaining in post, Mr Swinney's appointment as First Minister would mean the government is refocusing and taking forward those areas we're already working on, but reprioritising and making sure that we're finding consensus across the Parliament. Speaking to the programme later, Liz Lloyd, who served as Nicola Sturgeon's Chief of Staff, said she did not think Mr Swinney would necessarily bin policies just because they were associated with the Greens. They're forgetting that some of those policies the entire SNP was elected on, including people like Kate Forbes, and that some of them are necessary. So there's talk about dumping policies to decarbonise our homes. Well, there has to be some policy to do that, otherwise the climate targets we've already missed are definitely going to be missed the next time. So can you dump the existing proposal? But what are you going to do instead? She said Mr Swinney would have to balance economic issues with social issues. We're still concerned about people who are living in poverty. We're still concerned about the environment, and it's a challenge that they're going to have to deal with, how they continue to pursue those policies without letting them be the dominant part of the debate and keeping the political focus on the economic side. During his interview, Mr Gray was also asked about NHS reform. He said he was open to ideas on the future of Scotland's NHS, as long as they do not cross red lines when keeping the health service in public hands and free at the point of use. Last year, the former Chief Executive of NHS Scotland, Professor Paul Gray, told the BBC that the health service in its current form is not sustainable and called for a mature debate on the role that the private sector could play. He said, "What we can't afford is just to carry on as we are and hope for the best. The consequence is that everything slowly gets worse." Mr Gray told the BBC, "I've already set a paper to Cabinet setting out the national conversations that I wish to have with the people of Scotland, with staff, trade unions, expert academics, or other colleagues across Parliament around how we take our health service forward." He added, "I'm relatively open to ideas as long as they don't cross the red lines that I have, but I think also the people of Scotland have, around making sure that our NHS remains in public hands and remains it free at the point of use to the point of delivery. Aside from that, I'm relatively pragmatic around what else we can do to make sure we drive that improvement and sustainability for our health service." Mr Gray said he wanted to harness some of the incredible work being done on innovation and medical devices from the private sector. Because there are many Scottish businesses and academics that are working on these improvements, that can help ensure that our NHS moves forward. We can improve the care that's been given. That's very different from compromising on free at the point of use. And that article was written by Andrew Learmonth and read by me, Ian McKenna. From the Glasgow Times, Monday the 13th of May, from the sports section. Rory McIlroy storms the Wells Fargo victory ahead of next major bid. By Martin McMillan. Rory McIlroy claimed back-to-back PGA Tour titles as he overhauled Xander Schauffele with a stunning back nine display at the Wells Fargo Championship. The world number 2, who claimed the Zurich Classic alongside Shane Lowry a fortnight ago, started the final round one behind Schauffele but romped home with an inward 32 to win in style. A 6 under 65 saw McIlroy finish 17 under as he triumphed at Quail Hollow for the 4th time and provided the perfect tune-up for next week's US PGA Championship at Valhalla, the scene of his most recent major victory in 2014. McIlroy told Sky Sports, "Coming into this week, at a golf course I am comfortable with, my golf swing feels more comfortable than it has done. Going to a venue next week where I have won, it feels like the stars are aligning a little bit, but I have a lot of golf to play and a lot of great players to try to beat. I am going into the next major of the year feeling really good about myself." Schauffele finished 5 behind in second after stumbling to a 71, with South Korea's An Byung-hung third on 9 under after a 66. McIlroy birdied the first after a fine approach to inside 5 feet. However, he handed the shot back at the 4th after failing to get up and down from a greenside bunker. Schauffele's run of pars ended with a 3-putt bogey in the 6th, but he bounced back in style at the next, firing his approach to the par 5 12 feet and holding for an eagle. McIlroy found himself 2 shots back when he made a par on the same hole after 3 putting. However, the Northern Irishman stormed back with birdies at the 8th and 9th before producing an eagle of his own from 34 feet at the 10th. Schauffele was only 1 under for the same 3-hole stretch to leave the 4-time major winner 1 ahead. McIlroy found himself 2 in front as Schauffele dropped a shot in the 12th and ramped up the pressure on his playing partner with a birdie from 13 feet at the short next. Schauffele failed to save par after hitting his tee shot into rough behind the green on the 13th to leave McIlroy 4 clear. McIlroy got up and down from a greenside bunker for another gain at the drivable 14th, with Schauffele missing from 5 feet to leave his rival 5 clear. An eagle from a greenside bunker in the 15th eliminated any prospect of a nervy finish for McIlroy, and the 35-year-old parred the 16th and 17th before dropping 2 shots in the last after hitting his approach in the water. And that report was by Martin McMillan and read by me, Ian McKenna.
The Herald on the 14th of May in the news section. Brown demands UK budget commitment to cut child poverty, by Kathleen Nutt. Former Prime Minister Gordon Brown is calling for a multi-billion-pound programme to tackle childhood poverty. He's urging Chancellor Jeremy Hunt to use a mini-budget later this year to announce a £3 billion drive to tackle the issue. Mr Brown warned that without help, the number of children living in poverty could increase to a record 4.5 million. He published a paper setting out a potential emergency anti-poverty measures, including bringing back the Sure Start programme, supporting the low-waged and unemployed into better-paid jobs, and extending the Household Support Fund. Mr Brown said the sprawling nature of the poverty crisis, which has tentacles reaching into health, education, work, community, energy, transport, and more, should banish any illusion that this is a challenge that can be safely led from any one department. Instead, a cross-government task force will be required, not something separate from the departments that control the levers of delivery, but a body staffed with senior people embedded in each relevant ministry, who then combine to advance a strategy in a single forum away from the usual silos. Coordination and administrative support in a comprehensive and integrated way at the centre of government would be one natural way to arrange this. But it has to have the chairmanship and thus the enthusiastic blessing of the Prime Minister for it to succeed. Without this level of high-level sponsorship and true willingness to take big decisions, so-called task forces can exert disappointingly little force. New First Minister John Swinney has said boosting economic growth to reduce child poverty will be a central goal of his government. That was by Kathleen Nutt. Herald on the 14th of May and the news section. Glasgow Airport in cultural appropriation row over Gaelic mix-up by Andrew Learmonth. Bosses at Glasgow Airport have been blasted after they confused Irish Gaelic with Scottish Gaelic on an advert for their Caledonia bar and restaurant. A picture shared on social media showed a hoarding reading "An Bofo Ochras Ort," Caledonia coming soon. However, the phrase "An Bofo Ochras Ort" is the Irish Gaelic for "Are you hungry?" The Scottish Gaelic would be "A Bale and Takas Ort." Murdo McSween, a co-owner of Astar, a project agency based in Stornoway, tweeted, "Good morning at GLA_airport. Maybe don't just Google your translations. That's Irish, not Scottish Gaelic. So show some respect. Hire someone to translate it, or even just try at Learn Gaelic Scot. Maybe." He told the Herald it's just a kick in the teeth that companies do this. They have some good intentions, but the disrespect not to check or confirm the spelling or grammar is ridiculous. They wouldn't do that with French or Spanish or any other language. You see it all the time with Gaelic. Highland councillor Dom Hall McSween said the mistake was embarrassing. If you're going to do cultural appropriation, at least do it right, he added. On the airport's website, the Caledonia Bar is described as having a contemporary and stylish feel, featuring subtle Scottish elements. A Glasgow Airport spokesperson said, "A translation error was spotted by our retail team this morning and will be replaced by the airport partner responsible for the hoarding." And that was by Andrew Learmonth. The Herald on the 14th of May and the news section. Move to demolish shops on High Street for new homes by Brian Donnelly. Plans to demolish 2 shops as part of a new homes development has been recommended for approval. The move follows the earlier rejection of plans for the historic Scottish High Street. A statement by Block 9 Architects and JLL has been submitted for Honia Limited for a site next to Portobello Police Station. Edinburgh councillors will discuss the application, which has been supported by planning officials at a meeting on Wednesday. The applicant said, "Our client seeks to obtain planning approval for the demolition of 2 commercial premises and the construction of 11 new apartments and 1 retail unit. These proposals represent a revised scheme addressing the key points raised following the refusal of a previous planning application. This proposal will deliver residential dwellings and retail development in Portobello Town Centre." It added the proposals will deliver a sustainable and well-designed scheme that will contribute to climate mitigation and adaptation. The design draws on the character of the surrounding area to create a strong sense of place and is consistent with the 6 qualities of successful places. One of the reasons for refusal of the original application was that the proposed replacement building does not preserve or enhance the character or appearance of the conservation area. The applicant said, "We have reviewed the proposals in relation to this point and made a number of key changes to the design so that it helps preserve the character and appearance of the conservation area. These include significant reductions in the building's footprint, as well as changes to the proposed materials of the building. Additional areas of natural stone cladding have been included to the side elevation to ensure the proposals tie in with the context, which is predominantly buildings constructed of natural stone." And that was by Brian Donnelly. The Herald on the 14th of May and the news section. Poll: should Scotland's new hate crime law be scrapped, by Jodie Harrison. A poll has suggested that almost half of Scots believe the Hate Crime Act should be repealed. The Act creates a new stirring up offence for some protected characteristics and consolidates existing laws, but critics have suggested it could have a chilling effect on free speech. More than 7,000 complaints were made online in the first week after the law came into effect, and that number has now topped 10,000. The law has been criticised by figures such as J.K. Rowling and Elon Musk, but has been defended by the Scottish Government and former First Minister Hamza Yousaf. We want to know what the Herald readers think. Should the law be repealed? Vote now in our online poll. The Scottish Conservatives proposed a motion at Holyrood last month to have the law repealed, but it was voted down by 69 votes to 49 with 5 absentations. Today's Savanta poll for the Scotsman found 56% of men believe the law should be scrapped compared to 43% of women. It also found 62% of people aged 55 or over thought the Act should be revoked, while only 34% of those aged 16 to 34 thought the same. Savanta interviewed 1,080 Scottish adults aged 16 and over online between May 3 and May 8. Scottish Tory Justice spokesman Russell Finlay said the new First Minister John Swinney should listen to the Scottish public who want to bin the SNP's hate crime law. This flow of legislation is being weaponised by activists with an axe to grind and putting our overstretched police under increased and unnecessary pressure, he said. Police and legal experts warned that this would happen, yet the Scottish Conservatives were the only party to oppose in Parliament. And that was by Jodie Harrison.
This is from the Herald Scotland of Tuesday the 14th of May 2024, from the business section. Artificial intelligence in focus at the University of Glasgow. This article is by Ian McConnell. Internationally renowned political economist Darren Acemoglu will examine artificial intelligence at the University of Glasgow tomorrow, exploring whether it will deliver the kinds of benefits technology leaders are promising, or increase further inequality and wealth concentration. The Massachusetts Institute of Technology professor is delivering his talk on artificial intelligence and its role in the economy and society, based on his new book, Power and Progress, Our 1,000-Year Struggle Over Technology and Prosperity, as part of the university's Adam Smith Distinguished Speaker Series. Mr. Acemoglu will also consider how we can make the best use of artificial intelligence and what paths we should choose. And he will look at artificial intelligence in the context of emerging economies and the world as a whole. Painting the backdrop to his lecture, the University of Glasgow said, "With growing excitement and investment in AI, particularly following the rapid spread of ChatGPT since its release in 2022, it is clear that there are many impressive achievements from the class of technologies commonly referred to as generative AI and huge promises being made. It is becoming evident that AI is here to stay and will impact many aspects of our lives in the economy." He said, "I am very excited to give the Adam Smith Lecture at the University of Glasgow. Our field owes its existence to Adam Smith and the work he started at Glasgow when Smith was grappling with central challenges facing 18th century economy and society. It is a humbling experience to give this lecture, and I feel the best I can do is to share my own perspective on some of the major challenges facing our own society, related to how we adapt to new technologies and how we can try to organize our institutions and markets to take best advantage of them." Graham Roy, Assistant Vice Principal and Dean of External Engagement at the University of Glasgow, said, "Adam Smith spoke of the benefits to economic prosperity from innovation, but cautioned too that the concentration of market power could harm the well-being of society. Ensuring that the benefits from AI are shared fairly across society is one of the great policy challenges of this decade. It's fantastic that we will have the opportunity to hear from one of the world's leading economists on how to maximize the benefits for everyone from the AI revolution. During Mr. Acemoglu's visit, the University of Glasgow will confer an honorary degree on him. That article was by Ian McConnell. This is from the Herald Scotland of Tuesday the 14th of May 2024 from the business section. Government stake in Edinburgh-based NatWest falls further. This article is by Scott Wright. The UK government's stake in NatWest Group, owner of Royal Bank of Scotland, has been further trimmed. NatWest announced yesterday that the public shareholding in the Edinburgh-headquartered bank is now below 27% as a result of its ongoing trading plan. It came less than a month after the stake had dipped below 28% and ahead of an expected retail sale of the UK government shares in the bank fell in a Tel Cid-style offer later this year. The bank fell into public ownership when it was bailed out by the state at the height of the financial crisis of 2008 and 2009. The shareholding stood at 45.9% at the end of 2022, but by December 2023 it had fallen to 37.98% through a combination of a daily trading plan and a £1.3 billion directed buyback on May the 22nd last year. Speaking as the bank announced its results for the first quarter last month, Chief Executive Paul Thwaite said, "We are pleased with the recent momentum in the reduction of HM Treasury's stake in the bank. Returning NatWest Group to private ownership is a shared ambition, and we believe it is in the best interest of both the bank and all our shareholders." When asked by one reporter if he had heard of Tel Cid, the catchphrase of the campaign used in the 1980s to promote the sale of shares in British Gas, Mr. Thwaite said, "Being candid with you, I do vaguely remember Tel Cid, but I should admit I was pretty young when that happened. More seriously, and more importantly, I think the retail share offer, should it happen, is an important opportunity because it further reduces the government shareholding. The prospect of the lender making a full return to private hands is inching closer after Chancellor of the Exchequer Jeremy Hunt signalled a retail offer of the government stake could take place as early as this summer. It would bring an end to what Chairman NatWest Rick Haythornthwaite described this week as a sorry tale of government involvement in the institution. That article was by Scott Wright.
That concludes this week's edition of the Herald Scotland podcast. Please remember to subscribe to our channels at Tune Review and to tell your friends about our service.